Thank you and good evening everybody, and welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting of the 30th of May 2023. Could I remind anybody and everybody that's in the chamber to please put your phones on silent or put them away somewhere. Thank you. Item number 1, recording and live streaming of council meetings. I will get the CEO to read the following statement. Thank you.
All council meetings are filmed with both video and audio being recorded. Video is focused on a specific area, however, audio from the entire room is captured. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries and question time will not be recorded in the written minutes. By submitting a question, you consent to your question being read aloud at the meeting. The reasoning behind recording council meetings is to hold us more accountable and to improve the transparency of council's decision-making to our community. The full meeting is being streamed live on council's YouTube channel, which is Alpine Shire Council, and will also be available on the YouTube channel after this meeting.
Thank you. Would everybody please stand, and I shall do the acknowledgement of traditional custodians. The Alpine Shire acknowledges the Taungurung peoples as the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are meeting today. Council also acknowledges all of the traditional owners of the wider lands of the area known as the Alpine Shire. We also acknowledge those people who have contributed to the rich fabric of our community and strive to make wise decisions that will improve the quality of life for all. Thank you. Be seated. Now, this next one is the confirmation of minutes, and I would like to thank someone who has put in a couple of questions on notice tonight for pointing out a minor discrepancy in the minutes from last meeting, which I believe have been now fixed, for want of a better word.
That's correct. We've made the amendments to the April minutes.
Thank you very much. So with that in mind, could I ask that the minutes of the council meeting held on 26th of April 2023 circulated be confirmed? Could I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Kelly. Councillor Keeble. Any comments? No. Any detractors? No. Thank you. Those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Apologies tonight. We have no apologies. However, we do have Councillor Nicholas joining us virtually. We can see her. I don't believe you guys can. But you will be able to hear her as the meeting progresses. Obituaries and congratulations, and I'll start with Councillor Nicholas. No?
No.
No, thank you.
Not tonight.
Not tonight. Then I'll start further on my left with Councillor Janus, please.
Thank you. Just one tonight. I want to congratulate the committee of the La Fiera Festival in Myrtleford last weekend. The weather was ordinary, I suppose, to say the least. However, it was a terrific event. Over 3,500 people or more attended. 15% from 3737 postcode, and 85% of those people, the rest of the people from Sydney, Geelong, Newcastle, all came to our small town to visit and enjoy the Italian festival. But one of the great things about it as well with our, garbage removal and that at festivals, that our general waste was reduced by over 90% for that event, and 4.5 trailer loads of recyclables taken off to community garden to make compost with. So it's a great outcome, and something to look forward to with our FOGO bins as well.
Thank you.
Well done to that committee.
Good. Councillor Hughes.
Yes, thank you. Last Saturday night, the Bright Fire Brigade held their presentation night. 14 operational firefighters received the service awards, ranging from 5 years to 40 years of service. First Lieutenant Paul Mansfield received his CFA Life Membership Medal with 35 years of service and 22 years of that being captain. And Paul joins fellow firefighters John Wyman and Graham Cox as 3 active operational members of the brigade who've received their life membership for their ongoing commitment. So big congratulations to everyone there.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mayor Forsyth. I'd like to congratulate Russell Bellingham, another service award. 50 years in the Department of Education and Training. Doesn't come around very often. 50 years, a long time. So congratulations to Russell.
Councillor Prime.
No, none from me, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Winter's almost upon us, but the Autumn Festival, and congratulations to the committee of the Bride Autumn Festival and associated events, the Wandy Nut Festival as well. Terrific to keep those on the schedule for another year and really well attended. Lots of great events and I enjoyed the 2-day combo of the Wandy Nut Festival this year.
Very good. Moving on. All congratulations tonight. That's great. Item 6, declarations of councillors of conflict of interest. Do any councillors perceive a conflict of interest in any proceedings tonight?
No.
Mayor, I would declare a conflict of interest on the item 812, residual greenhouse gas offsets.
Thank you. Right, public questions. 2 forms of questions, as all of you who tune in will understand. There are questions on notice, limited to 2 questions per person. Written questions on notice will be tabled ahead of questions from the floor. So I'm going to go through, we have a few questions tonight, and I believe there are some people in the auditorium tonight who do have questions as well. So let's go through the questions on notice, written ones first. The first series is, in actual fact, there is more than 2 questions on this, but it's in one page and there are a few things that have already been done. Question at stake in the Ordinary Council meeting minutes. Next one is I would like to request a copy of the Sustainable Subdivision Framework Checklist, and I believe that that is available and will be provided. Further, I would like to request a digital copy of the report titled Preliminary Site Investigation. I believe that's already been done. Correct? So the question really tonight is an issue of the objection to the Bright Valley signage, which contravenes the outdated and inadequate Alpine planning scheme, which states that signage along the Great Alpine Road should be minimised. The question is still being reviewed. Can you provide me with any updates?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Havercroft. Yep.
With regards to signage, this is a matter that's being jointly looked at between the local laws team and the statutory planning team. There's different rules and exemptions that apply to signs that are affixed to objects, such as trees, as those signs that are affixed to the ground, like the green signs in the Bright Western Gateway development site. The owners of the green signs have been made aware of their obligations under the planning scheme, and we're anticipating a response either to take advantage of exemptions within the scheme or to put in a planning application for them.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Question number 2 comes from Josephine Zananiri. Question 1. Those ratepayers currently composting their food and garden organics, the FOGO operation is a rip-off. If we retain our green waste for compost, we have to still pay council $95. If we provide our green waste as mandated by council, we must then buy our compost from a hardware store and pay the $95 FOGO fee as well. I think that basically is a question, will we still have to do that? And question 2, because I think they can be answered together, could the council let ratepayers know who they will on-sell the FOGO organics to and how much this will profit the council? Again, I think it's... Thank you, Mr Rees, Director of Customer and Community. Director of Assets.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The answer to question 1, Home composters are encouraged to continue composting everything they can process within the constraints of their home composting system and reap the associated benefits. The FOGO service is designed to support home composting systems by reducing waste sent to landfill and the associated greenhouse gas emissions. This is achieved by accepting items that some home composting systems cannot process and also the volumes that cannot be handled by home composting systems. These items include things such as meat, bones, dairy, citrus, oils, fats, cooked food, shredded and scrunched paper, pizza boxes, soiled paper, tissues and paper towel, animal waste including clay tofu or paper-based kitty litter that some home composting systems are unable to process. In addition, garden waste that could be detrimental to home composting systems, such as diseased plants, noxious weeds, and excess lawn clippings and leaves can also be put into the FOGO bins. With regard to question 2, Council will not be selling the FOGO organics. Council will in fact be paying for the curbside collection of FOGO, and the contractor will then be taking these materials to a commercial composting facility in Wagga Wagga, where it will be turned into high-quality compost. So Council will not be making any profit. It will in fact be a cost.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. Question 3 from Elizabeth Smith. This is just a basic thank you to Director Rees regarding the letter about the Mount Beauty UC skip. The question basically is relating to why a skip cannot be positioned somewhere near the VIC area, which is the Visitor Information Centre in Mount Beauty. Do you have an answer for this question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As has been communicated to Elizabeth Smith previously on a number of occasions, the car park at the VIC is a high traffic area, and her request has been assessed in line with the use of that particular property, and her request has been declined. However, in the spirit of trying to work together, we recommend that Elizabeth Smith raises her waste requirements as part of her current ongoing licence negotiations that she's undertaking with council officers, so that we are better able to understand their specific needs and see what we can do to direct them down an appropriate path of action.
The extra part of the question is regarding to, is there any other place we could put the skip on council land? And I'm wondering if there is a policy regarding that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is not a policy that governs the storage of skips on council land. However, there is a principle of equity and fairness. And in the, with regards to this principle, in the event that council were to offer this to Elizabeth Smith's request, we would be obliged to open up this opportunity through an EOI, an expression of interest, to all businesses in Mount Beauty, which would result in everyone having an opportunity for this to be considered. In the interests of equity, we feel that we can work with Elizabeth and her team to see what their waste requirements are more specifically and see if we can find a better solution for them.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. Questions 4 and 5 are from Kath Healy, and there is they're basically the same question. However, they relate to an assessment and a listing. I'll read the question. How is the progress of our gateway trees being heritage assessed, as mentioned at the Alpine Shire Council meeting on the 28th of March 2023? The second question is, how is the progress of our gateway trees being heritage listed? So first up, how are they being assessed? And secondly, how far down the track are we before a listing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've focused on the question around the progress of this matter, and so to bring everyone up to speed, after a public request for quotation process, a contract has been awarded to a company called GML, who are heritage and landscape experts. This contract was awarded last week. There was a kick-off meeting with them last week to discuss the scope, and they will be on site on the 8th of June to undertake an assessment. Once that has been done, they will then revert with a timeline for completion, and we'll be able to keep you updated.
Thank you. Now we can have some public questions from the floor. Who would like to, anybody would like questions? Yep, thank you. The microphone is up there. Thank you, Mr. Dyer. Got a green light? Good.
Okay, my question is the rubbish. Will, I spoke to you late last year, and I mentioned about the bins out the front of the public toilets, how filthy they were and they needed steam cleaning. Well, they're still the same as they are, and the one at the Coles, it got burnt 3 to 4 months ago, and it's still, if there's a problem replacing it, I don't know.
Mr. Dyer, we're referring to Myrtleford?
Myrtleford, yes.
Thank you. Yep.
But my main concern is, and the question is, when the contractor picks up all the rubbish and throws it in the back of his ute with the canopy on, and I believe there's a van going around at the moment with a tandem trailer and they're throwing the rubbish in that, does it go out to the landfill and get put into the skip bin without being recycled, no recycling being done? The same as Bright and maybe the same as Mount Beauty also.
Is that a question we're going to answer tonight?
I can leave it for next month if you want to.
Perhaps if Mr. Rees is able to explain.
Yes, certainly. I think, Mr. Rees, can you answer that question, please?
Thank you, Mr. Dyer, and thank you for bringing these matters to our attention. The standard practice is that red top bins are not recycled, that is residual waste, and the yellow top bins is recycling. In the event that the contractor is mixing these, we'll make that investigation, but the typical process is that those are kept separate and should be kept separate, taken to the transfer station and put into the separate skips for haulage and reprocessing. So we'll take it on notice to inquire and ensure that the contractor is aware of the practices they need to follow, and we'll make sure that they follow those particular processes.
So who collects it all at the landfill? What happens with it when it goes in another skip?
This would be your second question. If you've got a more important question, I'll... Yeah, okay.
All right. Now, the second question is the trees. Now, I know you have a bit of trouble up here with some of the trees, but, Will, when I spoke to you also, there was a tree taken out the Scout Hall where the splash park's going to be. Now, as far as I'm concerned, there was nothing wrong with that tree. It was a whopping big tree, and you were going to look into that. Now, there's also another one that was taken out at the Myrtleford Shire offices, which was another whopping big tree. I'd like to know why that tree was taken out and the reason why. And also at Ruby's Milk Bar, there was another beautiful tree there for shade, and that's one thing Myrtleford hasn't got, is shade. Maybe you should look into it.
I think we can answer you the Ruby's Milk Bar.
Yes, a limb broke. Is that correct?
Yeah, sorry?
Yeah, a limb broke and they had to take the tree out.
There was, yeah, correct.
Yeah,
so
which was
that's the answer to that one.
Well, that was a crying shame. But also, apart from the other two trees that I just spoke about, I was out the showgrounds the other day having smoko, and down at the arena there's about 15, 20 red gum trees taken out along the boundary between the golf course and the recreation reserve. I'd like to know why they were taken out.
Certainly, I think what happened.
This was only a month or so back.
Correct. I think we need to check with the golf club on that. I think that was part of their drainage issues. However, I can get an answer for you on that one. All right?
That'd be well appreciated.
How would you like the answer given to you? As I mentioned in the next council meeting? Or?
I'll come next council meeting and we can discuss it at the council. Well, as far as I'm concerned, there should be matters arising from previous minutes.
So, for your benefit, I think we'll be able to answer those questions that you've asked tonight. We can answer those, and you keep another 2 questions for next council meeting. All right?
I surely will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the floor tonight? Thank you.
Nothing was on.
Press it again.
My question is,
And hold it up, please, Kath.
I'm not against the FOGO collection, but what I'm mystified is, what's the reasoning behind the survey that the Shire sent out for all residents to supposedly complete when the voices weren't being heard? It really seemed a lost cause, and I believe the Shire already had a decision on the fact that the bins...
Sure, so you thought it was a preordained question?
So,
Yeah,
you
predicate.
know, there's a lot of people out there who are feeling a bit duped, a bit cheated, a bit, well, saddened by how this has occurred. And secondly, what did it cost the Shire to have the survey done?
Certainly. Can I defer to... Yes, Director of Assets. Thank you, Mr Rees. He may have those answers for you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for your question. The easier one to answer is how much did it cost to run the survey? We use council officers to run those surveys, so that's part of our normal business. So it didn't cost anything from an external perspective. In terms of the reasons for the survey, were to establish community awareness and understanding of FOGO, to inform our communication program, to make sure that we address the questions and the matters that were of interest to the community as part of the rollout.
But I think people were of the opinion that it would have some effect on the decision-making of the bins, and I think some people were hoping, especially elderly people who financially, you know, in difficulty, were hoping that they could opt out, and there is no opt-out option. So I'm just sort of speaking on their behalf, really. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, I'd like to thank you for your very respectful way in which you've engaged with questions here tonight. Sometimes they haven't been as respectful, not talking about anybody in this room now, but I just thank you for that, and anybody who's listening at home. There is ways to engage with council, and there are ways that will get councillors' backs up as well. So thank you very much. You have a question. Thank you.
I'm going to be very cheeky first up and offer some congratulations, because if the Bright CFA can be congratulated, so should the Toowoomba CFA, who had their presentation night on Saturday night as well. So not to be missed, they had awards. My question actually relates to a notice that came out on the Facebook site, I think last week, and it was to do with the work the Shire is doing on sustainable energy and applying solar panels to various buildings. And as I was reading it, I was thinking to myself, this reads as if the Shire has done absolutely all of the work in this, and there's no mention of the community groups that have been involved in doing some of the, well, applying for grants as well. So I just wonder if you could make certain that community groups, if they've been involved in some of these projects, just get a mention, because I think it does them a lot of good.
Thanks very much, Mary. There's two aspects to this. One is that there is a climate action policy and a roadwork to do with the organisation itself. So some of the stuff you would have seen would be organisational based. The next part of that is the community engagement and community resilience to climate action or climate plan, and that's the work that is ongoing now. So there is two aspects to it, but good pick up. Thank you.
Perhaps through you, Mayor, I could
certainly.
just make a special call out to Totally Renewable Energy Kiwa, so the track organisation, so they secured the funding that's enabled us to put the solar facilities onto the stadium in Mount Beauty. So I'm aware of that specific one I think Mary's referring to.
All right, good. Thank you, Mr Jeremy. Moving on to presentation of reports by officers. 8.1, Director of Assets, Mr Alan Rees, Site Office at Porepunkah Transfer Station.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report relates to the award of a contract for the installation of a demountable site office at the Porepunkah Transfer Station. In terms of background, the current facilities for staff are in significant state of disrepair and no longer meet the appropriate minimum OH&S requirements and also are not able to meet a building permit requirement as well, which is what has triggered this investment. The scope was subject to a public tender process. Despite some significant interest, only one tender was received. This tender was fully conforming and has been recommended for award, or this contract has been recommended for award this evening. In terms of issues, the Popanka transfer station site constraints include no electricity or water supply at the particular site, which means that a modular self-contained office with integrated amenities is required to be installed, so entirely self-contained building. And the scope for this was market tested through engagement with modular building suppliers, and a nominal total value of $200,000 was identified as a suitable and appropriate price for that scope. In terms of financial resource implications, there is an opportunity to deliver this project as an unbudgeted project by the end of this financial year based on the project plan that's been submitted by the tenderer, instead of delaying works and budgeting this item for the 23-24 financial year. Council does have adequate financial resources and project management capacity to deliver this project as scoped.
Thank you. Moved Councillor Janus. Could I have a seconder, Councillor Prime? Councillor Janus.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. This is an essential piece of work for our valuable employees at those sites. I've worked on those sites myself in those exact conditions, and it is not pleasant with the flies, etc., etc., and just basic health standards. And I think it's appropriate that, if we can, to have that building in place prior to the hot summer that we will surely get at some point. It's an essential OH&S matter for our staff.
Councillor Prime.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Completely agree. We don't have a photo of it, but it definitely needs updating, and happy to support this. And is that going to be ready by summer? Do we know? Yes, correct. Thank you.
Any other councillors like to make comment on this? Yes, Councillor Kelly.
Mayor, just one question, Mr Rees. Thank you. In the risk table on the report, installation not completed for weekend opening. Can you give some detail to that risk?
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Yes, the objective is for the unit to be trucked from Melbourne and installed within a number of days to ensure that the transfer station normal opening hours over weekends are not interrupted. So we believe that that's possible. However, there is a small risk that if we can't get all connections done, that there may be an impact to weekend opening hours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Rees.
Any other comments? No? In that case, I shall put this to the vote. Those in favour of this recommendation? Thank you. We have a unanimous decision. Item 8.1.2, Councillor Kelly. I'll note, Councillor Kelly, before the reading of this, Councillor Kelly is leaving the room at 5:30. And I'll ask my Sergeant-at-Arms when the time comes to... All right, thank you, Mr Rees. Residual greenhouse gas offsets. Yes.
Mr Mayor, before Director Rees commences, I would move that this matter be laid on the table to the next meeting, because I don't feel that we and myself have sufficient knowledge in this matter. There's some items that need to be clarified, and it's not just myself. There are other councillors in the same position, and we will need, I believe, some extra time to have those matters addressed before it comes to council for a vote.
So we've got a laying on the table of this particular recommendation by Councillor Janus. Can I have a seconder for that recommendation? I've got Councillor Nicholas online here. Councillor Nicholas, we've heard from Councillor Janus. Your comments?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Janus. It's more complex than it might seem just from looking at the recommendation that's there in front of us tonight. And I'm looking forward to drilling a bit deeper and making sure that we fully understand what we're committing to before we make a commitment.
Do any other councillors wish to make comment, either for or against this, putting it on the table? No? Okay, in that case, could I just have a show of hands as to whether we'll agree with laying it aside until we got one there, definitely? Yes? Okay, fine. Thank you very much. So this item will now be forwarded to a future council meeting. So in that case, could I please ask, thank you, to retrieve Councillor Kelly. Councillor Kelly is re-entering the meeting at 5:32. Item 8.1.3, dinner plane bus. I again believe this is Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report relates to the establishment of a memorandum of understanding between Alpine Shire Council and the Mount Hotham Alpine Resort for the delivery of the dinner plane bus service for the 2023 winter season. In terms of background, there was a contract in place for the previous season that ended at the conclusion of the 2022 winter season. Following that, Council conducted a public tender for the service for the 2023-2024 season in November last year. One tender response was received in this process, however, that tenderer later withdrew. In reviewing the service, it is believed that having a single operator running the Hotham intra-village service as well as the dinner plane bus service managed under a single contract has the potential to deliver an improved customer experience at the same time as potentially realising operational efficiencies. At a confidential council meeting held in February, council delegated the authority to the CEO to negotiate a subsidy payment and enter into a contract with the Alpine Resorts Victoria for the provision of this service.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Keeble.
I thank the CEO for his work and his team's work with their communications and relationship to the Mount Hotham Alpine Resort. I think this is a good change of direction. I think having the one provider will open up other avenues, hopefully. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
Look, just I guess, last year our contribution was somewhere in the order of 165k in round numbers, plus there was a fuel subsidy negotiated to the order of 16k or up to. So I think this represents a good value step in the right direction, and certainly the use of the special rate to meet this service or our contribution to it. And the declining costs there suggest there is some value, market value there. So I think it's a good result, good direction.
Any other councillors got comments? Yes, Councillor Nicholas.
I am just reiterating what the others have said, but as a winter resident at Hotham for 19 years, I can genuinely say that dinner plane bus is a really important part of linking the dual resorts, and that having one organisation running the internal Hotham Resort bus service and the dinner plane bus, I think will be a really good outcome. Look forward to using them both this year.
Excellent. Any other councillor comments? No? Yes, Councillor Janus.
Who's got the contract?
The CEO may have an answer.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. So it's a company called Foresight has the bus contract.
Foresight.
Foresight.
Or Foresight.
Yeah, no conflict here.
I didn't think you had the appropriate licence, Mr. Mayor.
All right, that's all. Any other comments? No, I'll put this recommendation to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. That has been carried. 8.1.4, the Waste Services Policy. Again, Director of Assets, Mr Rees.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This policy relates to the updated Alpine Shire Council Waste Services Policy. In terms of background, the policy details the waste management services that Council provides to all residents, businesses and other groups within the community, including curbside collection services at Dinner Plain, provision of transfer stations and public place bin services. Council's previous waste policy came into operation on 1 July 2019 and has been reviewed and updated to reflect the service changes and align with the relevant acts of government and details all of Council's waste provisions to the community. In terms of issues and points of relevance, the main adjustment to this waste policy is the inclusion or the adjustment regarding Council's waste and recycling services, which under the Government Circular Economy Waste Reduction and Recycling Act of 2021 is to include the curbside food organic, garden organic or FOGO collection service. It also details various particulars of each of the waste services that Council provides.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. And second, Councillor Prime. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mr Rees. Really, just it's a change in the policy being noted with the addition of FOGO and a few other small things. So administration in that regards as well. So it's good to see it's come in after the changes in February, I should imagine. Cheers.
Councillor Prime.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yep, big hot topic at the moment is waste disposal. So I'd like to thank you for everyone who's sent in any questions about it or has been referred onto the frequently asked questions section of our website as well. Happy to support this. Also, if anyone who's flicking through the agenda wants to read the waste policy at the end of the agenda, did realise my bins have to be out by 6 a.m. on the day of collection, which does not often happen. And also 50 centimetres apart, apparently, as well. So it's actually, if you flick to the waste policy, it's a pretty succinct document and there's some pretty straightforward answers to things in there as well. If anyone, I know these documents are usually a little bit dry, but there's some really clearly stated things in there as well. So thank you for all the effort that's gone in.
Thank you. Any other councillors have comments? Yes, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Just an observation, there's actually been 3 acts of the State Parliament that have impacted this policy: the Local Government Act, the Circular Economy and also the EPA Act. All have been updated and modified in this time, which is probably a record number of acts that have impacted this particular area of policy. So we are obliged to keep moving with the state legislation in this area.
Yes, good observation. Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor, I'll go Councillor Hughes first.
Look, the FOGO collection service has obviously been a really big hot topic of conversation in many areas. I think a lot of it comes down to the education piece around it, a fear of something new. Some people find that they won't use it. Other people think it's fantastic. So when you're dealing with an entire shire of people, there's an understanding that, not everybody is going to necessarily agree with something moving forward, but it's legislation-based, it's the best, that council can do under the restrictions that they have. One of the questions that keeps popping up for me is around why an opt-out, I suppose, policy around this hasn't been introduced, and I was hoping that you might be able to shed some light on that one a little bit more, if possible, please.
I think Mr Rees would have an answer.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. Yes, we have had a significant number of people inquire about the option to opt out. Alpine Shire Council is following the best practice model of about 35 other councils, which have gone with no opt-out option at this point in time. And the reason for that is that we have around about 7,700 rateable properties. And when we embark on an opt-out pathway, we then need to spread the cost of FOGO over a narrower ratepayer base. So it'll be an inequitable sharing of costs for the greater benefit of the overall community. So we're following best practice from the overwhelming majority of councils.
Of that. And is that also around the fact that I suppose the waste collection and disposing of that isn't done here, like the costs involved in transporting that?
Well, you know, we don't have active landfills, so everything is taken to our transfer stations and then transported to dedicated facilities, which are outside of our shower boundaries at this point in time. So it does take into consideration the entire cost model.
Councillor Janus, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple, and I'm happy for you to take them on notice. However, it's to do with costings. So it's anticipated it'll be a $95 fee for the FOGO. But on the flip side to that, there'll be a reduction in the gate fee for the red bin, so the landfill. So how much we send to landfill, that will be reduced in our budget items. I'm assuming. Yes. But do we anticipate that the gate fee will increase? Have we been advised of any increases going forward for the gate fee? Do we know?
Councillor Janus, I may not be understanding your entire question, but I'll take some of it away on notice.
We're going to pay less for waste going to landfill because there is less because
Correct.
of FOGO.
Correct, absolutely.
So the savings that we make there, have they been taken into account when we set the $95 fee?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah. So to give you a sense of the overall net position, so due to the collaborative procurement process that we joined with a number of other councils, resulted in a net cost reduction of existing services of $240,000. So by collaborating with others, we've been able to reduce our existing services by that amount. Part of it is a range of factors, bin lift cost, and also reduced volume to landfill resulted in that cost reduction. However, of course, the introduction of FOGO adds cost. So the overall net position for our entire council is an increase of $820,000 on estimated volumes. So the current costing of average $95 per household per year is based on the total net position of ups and downs, which is then shared across ratepayers based on their bin mix.
So we're getting the best value as we can at the moment.
Correct.
Good. Okay, thank you. I apologise if I wasn't clear initially.
Councillor Nicholas, you had a question?
I did, thank you, Mayor Forsyth. I was going to raise this in item 8.2.1 and talk about FOGO because we have a strategic objective in our council plan that is responsible management of waste, and this is part of it. So I'm going to a little bit of a chat, but I've got a question. So I think what Councillor Hughes has said about education is critical, and part of the education is about what not having FOGO in landfill is going to do in the long term for our greenhouse gas emissions. And my question is, how long do you think it'll take till we have some information about how much less methane we will be emitting as a shire over time? And I just wanted to mention, well, whoever's going to try and answer that one or take it on notice as it may be, that we already manage our landfills closed, as Mr. Rees has said, but they still emit carbon product, the methane in particular, and we're still managing that over time. So it's costing to have that sort of stuff, the FOGO in our landfill, we're not even counting that yet in what we're charging and what we're not charging. So I think there's some other real benefits to getting it out of the bins, the red bins, that we haven't touched on earlier tonight.
Thank you. Did you hear? I'll ask the CEO just to maybe comment on your comments.
Yeah, perhaps through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps I could make a brief comment. So you're absolutely right, Councillor Nicholas, that there's a net benefit for the planet as a whole in keeping waste out of landfill, so reduction in the greenhouse gas emissions. When I think of your specific question, though, about Alpine Shire Council's net emissions, I don't believe it's going to make a difference because our accounting does not account for the emissions from the waste which is moved outside the Shire boundary. So whilst it's a benefit to the community at whole, it doesn't specifically benefit the calculation, the determination of net emissions from our operations.
Understood, and thank you for that.
Good. Any other comments? Thank you. I shall put the 5
Sorry, Mayor.
Oh, you did want...
Sorry, I thought you nodded.
No, I will not. Certainly. Councillor Kelly?
Look, the only thing I'd add here around, waste and recycling and the cost of dealing with anything that we put out to our curbside, you'll see, someone else made the point, we don't operate a landfill, but we're still paying for our, closed landfills. If you look in the report there in today's papers, there's over $1 million to manage to cap the landfills further, prevent rainwater getting in there, prevent groundwater contamination. So I think if we look at a little bit more medium term, we would say pulling any material or diverting any material from going into a hole in the ground is beneficial, and whether it's a direct benefit to us as ratepayers today, or perhaps it's the ratepayers of the next generation, there is a benefit to that because we are paying and maintaining closed landfills for waste that was disposed a long time ago. I'll get off my soapbox.
No, thank you. No, good points. I will just make one comment, and that is when I looked at this, I also, we've had emails in from people regarding the opt-out option and how other places are possibly doing it better than we're doing it. So I decided to go a little bit further, and I had a look at the waste costs and the waste charges in Germany and Netherlands, which seem to have things organised. And it would be costing each household or each ratepayer at least double what we're paying here. So I think that we're still doing reasonably well. Councillor Keeble, you had another comment?
I just, because I had the motion, can I have the last?
You do.
Is that okay?
And this is it.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mayor Forsyth. Good conversations. I should imagine the, waste service policy will change again in the future with the purple lid bin coming on, and not to put that out there, but everyone will know that from the state government with the recycling and waste that there's FOGO bin, there's a yellow bin, there's a red bin, and there's a purple bin, and that purple bin is in many councils and it's coming here, and we're working really hard, and that's the glass recycling. Glass needs to go into the purple bin, and I should imagine when we get to that space, that this waste service policy will change again.
Mm-hmm. It will. Thank you. Right. The recommendations, there are 5 recommendations. Could I please put those to the vote? Those in favour? Thank you. That is unanimous. Moving on to the Director of Customer and Community, Ms Havercroft. 8.2.1, Quarterly Performance Report, the Council Plan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. After that excitement, these are probably not quite so exciting. But this is the quarterly performance report of our achievements against the council plan. I don't intend to read out the whole report, but I thought I might pick out some of the highlights under each of our strategic objectives. So in Strategic Driver 1, for those who live and visit, we started a new community budget submissions process this year, and that included getting out and about to all of the pop-ups. And so we've had a raft of councillors, executive and officers at pop-ups to talk about the budgets, but actually since this report there has also been ones around FOGO, and there currently are ones around the Community Climate Action Plan. So it was a model that we have enjoyed and are continuing to use. Strategic Driver 2, for a thriving economy, put my teeth in, sorry. We've had numerous events across Alpine Shire this year. It's come back with a real boost after COVID, which is fantastic, including Alpine Valley Vibes and the established Brighter Days event. The events team have provided extra support to hold events in Mount Beauty, particularly as a result of the Bogon High Plains Road landslip and the support to that community that's been required as a result. Just a little stat. So visitation stats from Tourism Research Australia indicated that in 2022, for the calendar year, Alpine Shire saw a 9.3% increase in domestic visitation compared to 2021, which is great. Strategic Driver 3, for the bold protection of our future, as mentioned previously by Councillor Nicholas, we've got FOGO and the community engagement that's commenced around that and actually now is completed, but this is to the 31st of March, this report. And all of the work that's taken place with the teams to get the education and the collateral out to the community around that and keep people informed about what's happening. Strategic Driver 4, so the enjoyment and opportunities of our lifestyle, which is really focused this quarter around the land development strategy and the work. We did do pop-ups around that, but also all of the workshops that have taken place with the community to help them understand what we're asking and why. And that piece of work continues. Strategic Driver 5, for the strong and informed leadership. So this is around how we think the biggest thing from January to March is the restructure of our organisation internally and how that's now playing out to our community and our vision around that to create a positive customer experience, a positive employee experience, and to provide a sustainable future for the Alpine Shire. So the recommendation this evening is that Council notes and receives the quarterly performance report for the 31st of March 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Keeble. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Ms Havercroft. Touching on these on a regular basis, I think is really good to get out there just to show what it is that's continuing to happen off the back of our council plan. I think I want to put some focus on Strategic Driver 1, where there's made comment of community pop-ups and things like that. Council staff, councillors have been involved in these pop-ups, having good, honest conversations, back and forth queries from people asking all sorts of questions. And I think it's been a really positive shift in mindset for a lot of people where the regular, I suppose, channels of information have not been a strong suit, like jumping on websites and things like that. So having the opportunity to be face-to-face and have the conversations, I think, is really a good positive step forward. A big shout out to our CEO, Will Jeremy. I've had some amazing feedback from people with the community commitment at public meetings and good, honest conversation and strong points. So I just wanted to make that shout out to Mr. Jeremy as well.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble.
Yeah. Thanks for the information there, Director Havercroft. I said it right this time. I just want to point out the last one, leadership, the last one there, and to say that to people listening and out there that, we know that there are some delays in decisions around planning and whatnot, and that's not just in this council, that would be in every council, but I can assure people that the directors here and CEO are working very hard behind the scenes to get staff and move things along. So it will take a little bit of time, but we're all aware of it. And I just want to reiterate the leadership that's been shown internally. They are working hard towards solutions. So thanks.
Any other councillors like to make comment? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. One question on the kind of person that compares last quarterly report to the one tabled tonight. In strategic objective 1.2 around services that enhance health and wellbeing, I see there's a 10% uptick in the number of folk attending the maternal health care services, and I thought that's a big uptick. And I was just curious, Ms Havercroft, whether you've got any remarks about how the team are coping with that increase in their services or the demand for their services.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. If I'm permitted to say stats, damn stats, there's very few babies within the Alpine Shire, so actually a small number of babies makes a really big difference to our percentages in the maternal child health space. So they're coping absolutely fine. It's a well-resourced team that is managing with the number of small people that we have in our community at the moment. Thank you.
That sounds like a Treasurer Costello One for mum, one for dad, and one for the economy or the country, I think it was. wasn't it?
Yeah.
But thank you. Yeah.
Any other comments from our councillors? No, I'll put this recommendation that the quarterly performance report ending the 31st of March be received and noted. Those in favour? Thank you. That is unanimous. 8.2.2, the quarterly review, Q3 budget for period ending also the 31st of March. Thank you, Ms Havercroft.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Again, this report seems slightly out of sync with all the conversations and the community submissions that we've had relating to the draft budget for 23-24. So you have to delve back in time to put the report into some context. So at the 31st of March 2023, the council was forecasting a full year surplus of $5.3 million, which is slightly lower than the budgeted surplus of $5.5 million. So the headline figures there are a very close alignment to what we predicted at the start of the year. But the detail of the report will show that there's lots of runners and riders, and I shall pick out a few of those for information. So additional income from grants of $900,000 and rates and charges of $200,000. Additional expenditure for materials and expenses, so the expenditure side rather than the income, saw an increase of $1.5 million, largely resulting from expensing the Bogon High Plains project work that was undertaken in the year. And also, following revaluations at the start of the year, depreciation charge has gone up $1.5 million. In the financial year 22-23, the council committed to a huge capital works project of over $18 million. And as can be anticipated as we enter the third quarter of the year, there has been some things that have been accelerated and there are some things that have been delayed. I won't read them all out, but the broad brush analysis is that where there has been some delays, that's largely down to resourcing and of contractor availability. The supply chain in certain areas has been really tough to get contractors on time and on budget, and that has created some delays, and we continue to try to resource into our team appropriately. The report itself goes through all of the different teams, and that's now mapped to the new organisational structure, which took a little bit of work internally to try and remap how those charges are expensed and the income is allocated. We think we've got there, and we will continue to work through that through the drafting of the budget for next year as we roll towards the June council meeting to get that adopted, hopefully.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Prime. Councillor Keeble.
No, thanks for the report. Everything it's tracking along, considering the financial climate we find ourselves in regards to the additional cost of services and materials. But we're tracking along okay.
Councillor Prime.
Yeah, I concur. Considering exactly how things are, I can't get contractors in or on budget for any small projects at home. So the only thing I will ask you to tweak, I think this has come up before in the projects that we've postponed. It's the Toowoomba Hall demolition. I think that will be the Toowoomba Scout Hall demolition. Just
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor.
we're not knocking over any big buildings in Toowoomba, just a little one. But no, probably tracking pretty well considering. Thank you.
Just a simple question, and that is, does the council run a risk, or does the Shire run a risk of increased costs because of the delays? Like, are we going to find that when we do finally get something happening, the prices have gone up so much? Is that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, that is an ongoing risk. We're all in the same boat. The way we're approaching this risk is to request fixed lump sum contracts, one with clearly defined scope. And when we find that the responses are greater than the available funds, we go through a process of value engineering with the stakeholders to still achieve the best possible outcome for the project.
Certainly. Okay, thank you. Staying within budgetary.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions by councillors? No? Thank you. In that case, I'll just put this recommendation that council receives, it notes the Q3 budget report, quarterly review for the period ending the 31st of March. Those in favour? Thank you. That is also unanimous. Moving on to 8.2.3, Alpine Resilience Groups. Thank you again, Ms Havercroft.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to update and provide recommendations to Council on the changes to community resilience groups in the Alpine Shire. The report will set out in the background how some committees have changed their names and the impact that that's had on how they would like to be seen. Broadly, the term committee is out and the word partnership is in, and you can see that in the Alpine Resilience Committee that's become the Alpine Resilience Partnership. So the partnership is a partnership of emergency management agencies, health and social welfare agencies, plus community representatives. It's hosted by Alpine Shire Council with a focus on planning to increase community resilience and preparedness for response and recovery in an emergency. The ARP is the forum for government and non-government agencies to develop strategies and frameworks to support coordinated resilience planning for the communities and the adjoining alpine resorts. The issues...
So moved by Councillor Keeble. I have a seconder. Councillor Janus.
Reasonably administrative. Happy with the changes, really, from committee to partnership. But if that's the in words for the moment.
Partnerships.
Partnerships it is.
Councillor Janus.
Yeah, thanks. This actually went through a workshop just to get that name changed. It wasn't taken lightly. There's a lot of input into that. But I think it does... it's no longer a committee of council per se, so there's that further independence for the partnership group. But I will say that the Alpine Shire still has a major role in funding the secretariat of that organisation and of that group. And should that fall away, then I would hope that perhaps another organisation would take that on board. But that's perhaps, to me, a flag to say that the partnership has to produce the goods for Alpine Shire to continue to be involved deeply with that as well. And we have council representatives on there. Councillor Kelly is on there. Myself as chair at the moment, and we're providing the secretariats. But you know, there's great collaboration with all those agencies involved in there and community members. It's not just about agencies; it's about the community members as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Any comments? Yes. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd look just to point out in the terms of reference there, you know, there's a statement in there that I think is really useful regarding this group and that or partnership. Community resilience is best strengthened continuously, not just in times of crisis.
Yep.
It involves people working together to create sustainable links and solutions in their community. And I think, you know, to Councillor Janus's point, maintaining the momentum here, because, you know, our preparedness in this beautiful landscape that we live in is incredibly important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other comments by councillors? No? I shall put those... Councillor Keeble does have a right to reply.
No.
Fine. Yeah, I'll put those three recommendations to the councillor cohort. Those in favour? Thank you. That is also unanimous. Item 8.2.4, the financial investment policy. Again, thank you, Ms Havercroft.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The financial investments policy governs the investments of surplus council funds with the objective of maximising returns whilst respecting council's risk appetite and liquidity requirements. So the investment policy is up for its routine review, and during that review a couple of amendments have been made. One of them is its title. It was the investments policy, and there was a desire to sharpen its focus on the financial investments that council has rather than other investments that it might wish to have, such as property investments or other asset investments. And that is being clarified in the name, and I'll be making some adjustments to the minutes just for the councillors' knowledge where investment policy is still in there, allowed in financial investments policies. The policy will continue to require quarterly reporting of the investment portfolio, and Finance Committee have seen, and Audit and Risk Committee have seen a draft report around how our investments are currently situated and whether it complies with the financial investments policy as it stands at the moment. And that will become a quarterly piece of work that will be undertaken and shared with those groups. The treatment of unanticipated policy breaches beyond officers' control is also clarified in this revision and review, and it identifies that such breaches are to be reviewed between the financial accountant and the manager of corporate for remediation and to be reported to the Finance Committee and to the Audit and Risk Committee. That clarification wasn't in before. It was quite ambiguous about who and what would happen if we had a breach of our policy. So the recommendation before you this evening is that Council notes the financial investments policy has been reviewed by the Finance Committee and the Audit and Risk Committee. It revokes the current investment policy number 73. It adopts and then signs and seals the financial investments policy attached to the agenda this evening.
Thank you. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Kelly? Councillor Janus? Councillor Kelly?
A good document for ratepayers to understand how safely their resources are kept in appropriate financial institutions. I think there's some good evolution of our position here. I would like to see in the next version a commitment that is aligned with some of Council's own commitments, particularly with respect to climate change, and having some criteria around banking with institutions that are also aligned in some of the policy or social and other areas that Council has strong policy on.
Good. Councillor Janus?
No, just in relation to, the banks and the like, I went to a meeting recently on climate change and they're telling us how good they were and how they support communities. First question that came up, why you're closing all your branches in our small towns. So they haven't got it quite right yet.
Thanks, Councillor Janus. Any other comments by Yes, okay. Councillor Hughes.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think, as Councillor Kelly has said, reading through the policy and really showing the public on how safely it is, money is invested. Working in this industry myself, the volatility behind movement in the market can be quite high. So knowing that Council are doing the right thing in terms of securing funding in the way that they do, I think is really smart. And I also reiterate the fact of environmental and sustainable investment solutions is, in my eyes, the way of the future. So definitely advocate further research and knowledge in that area, for sure.
Councillor Keeble?
In recommendation 1, when you read it out, I just want to make sure we've got the right wording there. You said Audit and Risk Committee. Just want to know whether the word risk is left off there. Should recommendation 1 read Finance Committee and the Audit and Risk Committee?
Excellent spot, Councillor Keeble. I shall just amend the minutes.
Yep, okay. Thank you. And I think it's in the 3rd paragraph. Around about the policy will continue to require quarterly reporting on investment portfolio. Reporting will be provided to the Finance Committee. Just wondering, are we moving away from that in regards to Audit Committee and the finances internally? Just a point of note, I guess, for next time we have a quarterly report.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble, and I'm happy to take advice, but my understanding is at the moment the Finance Committee will stand as a committee of Council. There was previously some discussion about its removal, but only once we had satisfaction that we were receiving financial reports from the finance team that answered the questions that we thought we might have, and we haven't worked through that piece of work to satisfaction.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, happy with that. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholas, you had a question?
Yep, question statement. So note that item 3.6 in the financial investment policy attached to the agenda has responsible investing, and that there is ethical investment if it's got the same yield as anything else should be chosen, which is terrific. But if you don't ask, you don't get. So I guess my question would be is, do our people actually ask a bank, or in our investment process, do we ask whether there's an ethical option, or do we just go, oh, that's good, we'll take it? So a bit of a process there to make that item actually work. And then I think the rest of the stuff we should probably take to a discussion off a council meeting. But I did just want to mention too, the Standard & Poor's global rating system, and whether that has anything ethical in it, and perhaps we should be trying to get something ethical in that, given that it's the way the world's going.
Any comments from Ms Havercroft?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. To the first point, I think I'm going to have to take it on notice and ask the team whether they ask or whether we are a passive investor or a very active chooser of the investments that we take. I agree, I think the second point requires further consideration by the councillor group, and then I'll take some advice.
Thank you. Is that satisfied? Thanks, Councillor Nicholas. Okay, any other comments? All right, back to Councillor Kelly. Any further? Thank you. I'll put those recommendations with those word changes to the vote, please. Those in favour? Thank you. Again, unanimous. Thank you. 8.2.5, Instruments of Appointment and Authorisation, Planning and Environment Act. I think this is a business as usual one, but thank you. So moved. So moved? So moved. Councillor Keeble. And seconded. Councillor Prime. Comments, and would you like to read the recommendations, or shall I do that?
I was going to say that the recommendation is around about the council's appointed new manager, statutory planning, compliance and local laws. There's also instrument appointments that have been updated due to various issues. And so it's really paperwork, administration, upkeeping. But you can read them out if you like.
No, I think you've done well.
It's basically allowing the people who've just been employed to do the jobs that they've been employed to do, and to change some anomalies in the previous one.
And I think we've had some name changes as well, or title changes. Is that correct?
You're very kind, Mr Mayor. In the March meeting, I spelt somebody's name incorrectly. We've also had the resignation and the departure of our engineering coordinator. Our health and safety risk officer has become the manager of statutory planning and compliance, so her delegations are being updated to reflect that. And our compliance coordinator, we now have 2 for the time being, as we've got 2 part-time members of staff. So it's just updating everyone's staff list.
Thank you. Councillor Prime, any comments? No. Would any councillors like to take this one on? Any other comments? No, fine. Then the recommendations will be put to the vote. Thank you. Those in favour? Thank you. Again, carried. Item 9, informal meetings of councillors. A recommendation, the summary of the informal meetings of councillors for April up to May, up to last week. So moved. Councillor Keeble.
Second.
Seconded Councillor Hughes. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Item 10, presentation of reports by delegates. Have any of our delegates been to any meetings? Did you want to make a MOV?
I might do that in the next one. I haven't got anything ready, yeah.
Fabulous. No? Oh, sorry, Councillor Nicholas.
It's okay. I'm hard to see, I get that. So I attended the Goulburn Murray Climate Alliance quarterly meeting, and it was reasonably well attended. Sustainable subdivisions report was one of the more interesting things. That's some work in progress that Alpine Shire's part of, and there's some. It's really just trying to get up the local government areas to use the sustainable subdivisions criteria as subdivisions are being put forward. So, and we're the proponent of the subdivision. So that's stepping along. One of the really exciting things that I heard about though was a textile recycling opportunity at landfill. So there's an organisation that organises it at a landfill site in, I think it was Mansfield, but I'll double check that and make sure that information goes through to officers. And the final thing is that I put my hand up to go on the executive of that group, which will help drive the strategic direction. And one of the things I'm hoping to do is pick up a similar sort of project that and I'll talk to councillors more about it too, that the Barwon Southwest are doing, which is about insetting climate offsets, well, climate carbon sequestration, and it's working with this one in Barwon Southwest, just 3 local government areas and the local CMA. But some really positive stuff across the state that I might be more readily able to tap into at that level.
Excellent. How often do they meet, Councillor Ledley?
That one's quarterly and the executive's monthly.
Thank you.
I will.
Yep, certainly. Thanks, Councillor Keeble.
I was thinking I had to write a whole lot of stuff, but I attended the Municipal Association of Victoria's State Council last Friday, or the Friday before, in the Mayor's stead. The Mayor had a pre-engagement, couldn't attend. So the 72 councils were there, and they had over 90 motions to go through. We spent 2 hours doing some strategic work with the other mayors and CEOs from the councils. I sat on a table with the Mansfield CEO and Mayor, Shepparton and Benalla, so shout out to them if they're listening. And one of the major areas of discussion in the morning was definitely around about council meetings. And the Mayor earlier in our meeting made a remark about, people's questions and the way that they were presenting themselves. That's not the case in a lot of councils at the moment, especially in Metro Melbourne, with busloads of people being trucked into meetings and taking over meetings. So there was a lot of conversations about that. So yeah, it was a really worthwhile day. I thank the Mayor for leading and the rest of the team letting me go along. I had not been to that particular meeting before, so thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Keeble. Any other delegates? Sorry, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. At the end of April, I attended a whole day strategic planning day for Alpine Children's Services. It was absolutely sensational. We could have done it for 3 days straight. The CEO, board members and management staff of each of the 3 major centres across the Alpine Shire all sat down, having a look at the direction that, wanting to go, what it is that people are crying out for, what it is that we're wanting to instil in the tiny humans of the Alpine Shire. And it was really nice from a board of directors point of view to be able to sit there and see the capability of the people that we are putting our children in their care. And it's really nice that, we all sat there and we all had the same vision, just coming at it with different interpretations and ideas for, growing and thriving in this space. So, obviously there were a lot of things that came up that were issues that need to be resolved and worked through, and what that looks like at a 10, 15-year trajectory. But overall, it was actually a really excellent and well presented and well facilitated event. And there's been lots of feedback from the back of it as well. So I thought just sharing that information that, these discussions do continue behind the scenes that people aren't aware of. And I think that I'm actually really proud of Alpine Children's Services and the people leading from the front.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. No others? I will now move on to item 11 then, general business, and I'll start with Councillor Nicholas.
You're on mute, Sarah.
On mute.
Thank you, Mayor Forsyth. I've got a bit of business, general business this month, and I'll try and make it quick. A couple of things about planning. One is that we've been working as a council to look at how we can better service our applications, and one of the things that we've been doing in the past is that any application that has an objection comes to council to adjudicate and comes to a council meeting. And we've been looking at another way to do that, which is that community interest applications come to council, so that there's a couple of things that will do. We get a quick overview, and before we get a full report, so that we aren't tying up our planning officers building a report for us when they could be otherwise assessing planning applications. And it also means that we get a look at some of the projects that are going on across the Shire that we wouldn't have seen otherwise because there wasn't an objection. And one of the things that comes to mind is the aged care proposals for in Bright. So the sort of things that we'd be looking at as community interest, and I might ask Ms. Havercroft to add to this if I miss some things or if she thinks it's need a bit more work around it, is if there's a substantive difference to what's around the land that's has a permit application that comes in, then we would look at that one. We would look at if there was a non-farming use in the farming zone, and we'd look if there's a heritage or significant landscape overlay that might need some special look at it. We'd look at, as I mentioned, community infrastructure. So that's just some ideas of what community interest would mean. And I just wanted to put it out there. When we did have a discussion at council about making sure that people in the community understood that the rule of thumb that would come to council with one objection isn't how we're going to be operating into the future. So if you're really worried about something, then you actually need to call a councillor. That's my one. The second one, we'll probably get lots of councillors getting calls about this. It's the Wandillagong review that came up in the local Bright Observer paper last week. And there were some really good comments in that paper, but what I thought was needed a bit of very enforcing is that there will be engagement around that with Wandillagong residents and others who will be affected by any changes. So there'll also need to be recognition in that about the constraints such as bushfire and wastewater and how that actually affects what even the planning scheme can say. So watch the space for engagement and put your hand up and have a talk to us about it when that happens. What you're planning things. My third thing is was brought to our attention by our staff that one of our customer service staff, who I've actually known for 14 years in the customer service industry and who is just fantastic at her job, had to hang up on someone the other day because they were so angry and so rude. And I just wanted to point out that that's completely unacceptable behaviour to anybody, but let alone a service staff. And I do understand that person who is so rude will receive a letter about the incident from the Alpine Shire, and that the Alpine Shire management is working towards a policy to make sure that we do have our staff members back. But it's about general behaviour to people, even if you don't agree with them. And Mayor Forsyth's comments earlier today about how well people behaved in the question session, I think is really appropriate, given some of how people are treated up on staff. And my final one is that there is a community climate action survey live on our website, and I really push people to hop on there and just type in community climate, and the links will turn up. And what we're looking for is community priorities about climate action and challenges and opportunities. So go for it.
Thank you very much. Did you need any comments from Ms. Havercroft tonight on any of that? No?
Her choice.
Right, thank you. Good. Councillor, I'll start on the right now. Councillor Kelly, general business.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one item tonight on the topic of housing, with a couple of questions for some updates, if I could. Our federal member, Dr. Helen Haynes, spoke at the National Press Club 2 weeks ago. The focus of that Press Club speech was around housing affordability in our region, or actually regional Australia, but she tabled some stats that are of interest and relevance to us. The first one was somewhere around 61% of Indi residents are experiencing mortgage stress at this time. And the second one she tabled was 40% of renters are experiencing rental stress. And you know, our Shire, we can't address the macroeconomic trends of Australia, but we have a couple of initiatives that are quite relevant to these. The first one is the financial year 24 commitment to draft a local bylaw to better manage short-term holiday accommodation. And the second one is around the business case being worked on for key worker accommodation at some of our council-owned caravan parks. So I thought tonight it'd be useful just to get an update from officers, if we could, on those two initiatives, just in terms of how we're resourcing them, where we're at in the process so far, and what some of the timelines are there. Thank you.
CEO or Mr. Rees?
On each.
One each?
Yep.
Let's start with Ms Havercroft.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kelly. So to the short-term rental accommodation local law, we've set up a working group internally just to work through how we might implement it, and quite a lot of that might involve discussing with other councils what they've done. So we won't be the first to introduce a registration scheme of some variety through a local law to help support the amenity more broadly of our community. But it's budgeted for 23-24, and there is some budget in the draft budget at the moment to help us with that implementation. So the real work will start after June. But the working group has met once to try to establish the various areas of the business that will be touched by its implementation and then its enforcement. So that's the stage that we're up to, with a view for implementation in 24-25, but getting to that position over 23-24.
Thank you. Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kelly. In terms of the Caravan Park Cabins business case, an external project manager was engaged and is well progressed with the initial planning phase of what this project will entail. We anticipate a final report by the end of June and some council briefings prior to that to bring council up to speed on what's been discovered. And that will then lead to, I guess, some further discussions and further work based on the results that will be presented.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kelly. Thank you, directors. Councillor Prime.
No, none from me.
None, certainly. Councillor Keeble. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A few things, frosts have hit and snow has started, so please be really mindful of the wildlife that comes out, the roads that are there, and people around you. I say it every year, accidents can be avoided if a bit of extra care is being made. But it comes down to looking at your surroundings and the way people conduct themselves around you in the main streets and things like that as well. I saw a woman trip on some garden piping and everyone just kind of went, "Oh, you're right," and then off they went. It's not helping the fact that the next person might trip on the same thing. So I urge you, if you see something, it can be as simple as sending a quick email or quickly calling the council officers to go, "Hey, I've noticed something. Is it something that can be fixed?" Because within 4 days, I got a response and it was done. So I think we need to give more credit where credit is due in terms of the responsiveness of staff. So big shout out to the staff who have been involved in quite a few of these little things that I've been noticing. But just, be aware of your surroundings and what it is that you might be able to make an impact on, because that woman who did actually trip on that piping was elderly and it could have been a lot worse than it was. So minor things, I know it sounds trivial, but it can make a massive difference if, we all are contributing to making things safer around ourselves. And that comes down to footpaths with wet leaves and things like that. Speaking with Mr Rees last week, he was saying that, we all know that the Alpine Shire has beautiful autumn leaves and how wonderful they are, but the demand on council staff in terms of clean-up and all of that, they are trying their best and might not necessarily get to things as quick as one might anticipate. But sometimes if it is in that position where, it's not quite as safe and you can see that, it might just be worth a quick phone call to see if it's something that can be fixed quickly. We were lucky enough to sit down the other week with the youth advisory group called RAISE, so the Resilient Action Youth Squad, which is made up of youth people within our Alpine Shire across the board. And we sat here and they presented to us And it was just a really good, clear, concise direction of what it is that they're wanting to achieve and talk about amongst themselves in that area, and what it is that they feel that they might be able to do. And being able to open up that dialogue between council and the youth advisory group, I think, is a really useful tool, and that continued discussion of joining forces with ideas and concepts moving forward, I think it's a really strong thing, because there are certain things as a parent now that I know that my kids just go, oh, Mum. You know, they don't necessarily want to hear it from the oldies up here. They want to hear it amongst the youth and their peers. So I think it's really important that we continue to have those conversations and look at the ways that we can include the youth, because I think they're an untapped resource that there's a lot of good in the Alpine Shire that they can deliver on and help facilitate. And that comes down to looking, I mean, I have to admit, I would never have been a youth that would have Googled Alpine Shire Council website. To have a look at what it is in terms of strategic plans coming up in the Alpine Shire and the information that's going out and what it is they might be able to make an impact or put a voice forward. And simple things like on our website at the moment is there's a small competition where they could win $500 to be able to look at doing some artwork to decorate the, what is it? It's a generator, backup generator, thank you. Things like that where it's involving our youth, it's getting them excited. And yes, when there's money that can be won, it's always a bonus. But I think being able to point these things out to our youth to go, hey, just have a look at this and see if it could be something for you, or, talk to your niece or throw it to the neighbour and things like that. And the more conversations we have, the better. So I just wanting to, conversations between us oldies and the young ones, I think is really important to keep open.
You're right, mate. Yeah. I wasn't going to comment, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Janus, any? You're just fine. Councillor Methuselah. Councillor Janus, sorry.
Thank you. Yes, we are. Look, I'm sorry, but I'm probably more on a sombre note this evening. And following on from Councillor Hughes' comments in relation to youth, my condolences go to the families of people in the Western Districts who, after a terrible road crash out there, and young lives lost. We're coming up to the long weekend for the snow season before we sit on the next council meeting. And so that means that our roads and the like are going to be more treacherous, there are going to be more people on the road. I just want people to be more aware of their driving habits on the road in our shire, and if we can assist in any way as council or councillors, we'd be more than happy to do that. And in so doing, I want to actually thank our volunteers from the P12, not P12, the L2P driving program, who teach our young people good driving manners and good driving skills, and that's what's very important, that they understand what the actual conditions are on the road. It's totally different than what happens behind the Xbox. So, and I'm sorry to have to end on a sort of a more of a tragic note, but I think it's important that we get that road safety message out there to our young people. Mind you, I did ask those young people the other night if they could help me with some IT stuff through our land care.
I like it.
Of course, we got to reach out to them on their channel.
Yeah.
All right, that's all, Councillor Janus?
That'll do me.
Thank you very much. Now, I'll just comment on that L2P program. There is also an extension to that called New2P, which is for people that are not actually students. So it's an older age group. It could be people that have come in from overseas that don't know really how to drive. So the program has been extended, which is good. Item 12, motions for which notice has previously been given. There are none. Item 13, reception and reading of petitions. We have none tonight. Item 14, the documents for sealing. I have 3 documents. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Kelly and Councillor Janus. Thank you very much. And I apologise. General business is never complete unless we have the CEO, who always has a bit of general business, so please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I've got a couple of items. I'll keep them quick. The first is that our draft budget is out for public exhibition at the moment, as is the dinner plane special rate declaration. You've got a little less than 24 hours if you're going to get some comments in, so it closes at 5 p.m. tomorrow, and we're really looking forward to seeing what feedback we've got on the budget. I'd like to make a comment about the community budget submissions. We got a really solid response to the budget submissions. We weren't able to fund and progress everything next year, but don't feel disappointed if you didn't get your project funded, because we are taking on board. Director Rees is working with his team to refresh the project pipeline, and we're using the input that we got through the budget submission process to help us understand what we need to concentrate over the coming years. So you haven't wasted your time. Don't be depressed. We have heard your feedback, and we'll work on that. The second point I'd like to make is a quick update on the Bright Valley development. So this is the large development at the entrance to Bright. If you haven't heard about this, yeah, I'm not sure where you've been for the last few months, but just want to share with you. So we got a petition which you addressed earlier this year, and we got the petition is still doing the rounds, and we got a further 1,100 signatures delivered to us yesterday. So that petition now, which is a hand paper copy which has been signed by locals and visitors, we're now up to about 4,800 signatures. The change.org petition is still in circulation and has just ticked over 26,700. So there's quite a strong demonstration of support and interest in this development. Where we are in the process, our statutory planner is still assessing the subdivision permit application which has been received, and there's been no recommendation that the planning team has reached yet. Council has called in this particular planning permit application due to its community interest. So this will be a decision made by council at a council meeting rather than a decision made under delegation by a council officer. So ultimately the statutory planning team will reach a recommendation, and then it will be brought through a council report into council for them to consider at a council meeting. The team has applied to the Department of Transport and Planning for a speed change on the Great Alpine Road, and we're waiting for the feedback from the Department of Transport and Planning on that application. Once that has been assessed and feedback is provided, that then opens the way, hopefully, for intersection designs to be considered by the Department for Planning and Transport, which are based on a 60-kilometre-hour zone rather than 80 kilometres an hour. So the process is we need to get feedback first on the speed limit change, and once that happens, that opens the way for the new speed limit change to be assessed, or the new intersection designs. As Director Rees noted earlier this evening, we've awarded a contract for an assessment of the trees at the gateway, and that work is now underway. We've also either awarded or we're just about to award a contract for the assessment of the soil reports, so the soil assessment report that's been provided by the owners. We understand that a further set of soil tests has been carried out this year, but we haven't yet received the report from the developer yet on those soil tests. So we've requested those, and hopefully we can carry out assessment on all the results that are provided at the same time, which would be the most efficient for us. There's still a number of engineering queries we're working through in relation to drainage and cultural heritage management. So there's still quite a bit of work underway within the statutory planning team, and we are, clearly we're not here tonight presenting a recommendation. We think it's unlikely to be in June and maybe in July. That's probably the likely time frame at this stage for being in a position to bring a recommendation to council. So still quite a bit of work to go. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. CEO, and I apologise for leaving you off this time. Okay, so I have a mover, Councillor Kelly, and seconder, Councillor Janus, for the documents for sealing. Those in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. There being no further business, I'll declare this meeting closed at 6:40, and thank everybody for attending and for the respectful way questions were asked tonight.